Hello everyone and welcome to Kickoff Talk, where weekly we talk about District 10 and all the action that's occurred, both from the week before and the week ahead coming up. Tom Reisenweber joins me, Jeff Kirik, as we talk about the first week, which had some surprises to it, Tom.
Yeah, I think the one thing that stuck out to me first was, I call them our big three just because the two biggest schools in District 10 and Cathedral Prep plays like a big school, that all three, McDowell, Prep, and Erie, looked so good. I thought there was question marks from all three teams coming in. Erie High looked great against Roosevelt. You don't know how good Roosevelt really is, but Trayvon Tate had a great game. And you look at Marquella Darnell, sophomore, had a big game as well. Prep got some payback from last year with Clarkson North with Luke Singer scoring 5 touchdowns. And McDowell really kind of rolling over Seneca Valley, who's a WPIAL favorite this year. So I thought those three all looked pretty good.
One thing about those three teams too is if you review what went on, all three had big offensive performances and could be setting up big things. Like we said, we don't really know the quality of Roosevelt, but Erie will have a big test this week with Austin Pound Fitch, which I'm sure will provide a much stiffer test. But between the three of those schools, all three had real high-powered offense. Prep, one thing that strikes me is getting Luke Sittinger and Jaheim Howard into the backfield at the same time, and that they're both big play guys and they both run tough, and having them in the backfield at the same time really can confuse a defense. And once Prep starts sprinkling in the pass more, they're going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, and just watching the game film, it was interesting how disciplined the defense was. I know they gave up 34 points, but they looked really good, and the team looked really good for a week one game. They're really locked in right now, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go. A big key, I think, for McDowell was Braden Sobolewski taking over wide receiver. He's a nice target for Chris Yukno. Those two competed for the quarterback job last year. So I think that offense has a lot of weapons. Danny Blue had a couple of really nice runs, as well as Elijah Lopez. So
Elijah Lopez had 169 yards and that really flashy 36-yard touchdown run where he broke about 5 or 6 tackles.
Yeah, so I think all three, offenses look good. Erie High's defense was really aggressive, a lot more aggressive than last year. They really got after the quarterback. McDowell's defense holding Seneca Valley to 17 points. I think all three teams look really good for week one.
Yeah. Also from Erie County, Harbor Creek won and Corey won, but they were facing Erie County teams. So we're not real sure how the smaller schools in Erie County are looking against other regions, but a nice start for Harbor Creek.
Yeah, Casey Smith, Cody Smith, what a combination, twin brothers. Tyler East had some really nice runs in that game as well, watching the game film. You don't know, Harbor Creek beat up on Iroquois. Iroquois is going to have a down year. They had 26 on the roster to start the season, so we don't know where that win's going to stack, but that's a nice win for Harbor Creek in front of a big crowd. And then Corey rolling over Seneca. Again, we don't know. Seneca's got some blips here, some players that can really play, but overall it's going to be another struggling year. But Corey, they have a big test this week with Mercer's Prep, so we'll see how big that win was, how good they are.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, Region 6 kicks off this week, which is a big thing locally. We have Corey at Mercer's Prep playing at Mercer's University for the second straight week. We have a rivalry game, Fairview at Girard, and we have Titusville at Northeast.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Mercer's Prep, I'm sure they're pretty angry about last week. They lost 42-20 to Meadville. The score probably doesn't reflect that game as much. Mercer's Prep had a lot of mistakes on special teams. They had punts blocked, they had muffed punts, they had fumbles on punts. So they set up Meadville. Arian Cotterman is going to have a breakout year, I think, for Meadville. He had a really nice game rushing the ball. So we'll see how that win that loss translates to against Corey. Mercer looks for a nice bounce back. Fairview.
Well, one second here on the Mercer's Prep game. You had said going into that, I considered Mercer's Prep a heavy favorite in that because they'd come off 2 10-1 seasons. Meadville was 0-9 the previous season, and I just figured, even if it were closer, I figured Mercer's Prep would pull it out. But you had warned me that you thought Meadville was going back to its roots a little bit and getting a little more physical and focusing on running the ball. And that's exactly what they did with Cotterman and I think Hayden Parks.
Yeah, that's one of those things where Meadville, I think, was just angry from last year. They went 0-9, but some of those losses, they were really close. They shouldn't have lost. So I think they're going to be one of those teams in Region 7 that's really kind of playing angry this year, so we'll see how they do.
And speaking of playing angry, Girard had a 28-26 loss in overtime last week to Cambridge Springs. Now they host rival Fairview coming in, so they might be a team that has a chip on their shoulder hoping to get their rival.
Yeah, they were that close to a nice road win at Cambridge Springs. Who's going to be better than I think people think in Region 2. But it's going to be tough because Fairview played a really good Warren team, pretty tough. So we'll see what happens here. You never know in a rivalry game. Yeah. I picked Fairview to win this game. I think I might pick Girard. I can't remember now. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this game. A nice rivalry in West County. So that should be a great atmosphere. And then Ticeville looked pretty good, although they played Sagertown, so you don't know. And then Northeast hung with Franklin, a 5A team. So that's going to be a very interesting game in Northeast.
Absolutely. One thing about each year that I like about week 1 is new names start to emerge a little bit, and you never know who it's going to be. And one for Fairview that jumped out was Travis Burge, I believe it's pronounced. Anyway, he had 135 yards passing and a touchdown, and 141 yards rushing and a touchdown. And I always like to see those names, and then you start to look out for them. So he might be somebody to look out for. Region 7 is also starting in Erie County. People will have their eyes on this because General McLean's going to play its region opener, and Fort LaBeouf's going to play its opener, and it has a special occasion for the Fort LaBeouf game.
Yeah, the turf will be ready at Carmodino Field, so a lot of excitement there. I believe LaBeouf goes on the road for like 3 weeks after this, so this is going to be a big game for them.
And the field looks sharp.
It looks great, and they also might have an inspiration with Alex Blows after the season at quarterback. Warren comes in, a pretty solid team after a big win at Fairview, so it's going to be one of the better games of the week, I think.
I agree.
And it's going to be interesting. DuBois, they play Clearfield tough. Clearfield's a pretty good D9 team.
And they passed for 320 yards in that game. So,
as usual.
Yeah. but the one thing we pointed out in the preview coming up is that they passed for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns, but they also threw 3 interceptions. So there might be, vulnerability there that General McLean had sort of a rougher outing defensively against a very good Slippery Rock team that had a very versatile type of offense. So this is a chance for them to, again, go back to what they do best, running the ball and, trying to stop DuBois' passing game.
Yeah, and it was interesting watching the game film from McLean, Slippery Rock, because McLean stopped them a lot. And it's just Slippery Rock hit a couple field goals, and just a few mistakes here and there, and that game kind of gets a little bit closer than it was. So I think General McLean is very interesting to see what they do against DuBois' home opener this week. And then you got Oil City Franklin, the old rivalry game.
Absolutely.
Oil City held off Conneaut last week, and then Franklin beat up on Northeast a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Last year Christian Cole ran for like 1,000 yards in this game, so we'll see what happens without him there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Another Erie County team that got off to a slow start last week was Northwestern. They play a non-region game at Mercer this week. They lost to Northwestern lost to Greenville 21-0, so they're going to be looking to turn things around this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. All 21 points scored in the second quarter. Northwestern just had trouble moving the ball against the Trojans, so I think Greenville's going to be better than they were last year. I think this was 10-7 last year, Northwestern.
It was.
Up here in Albion. So Mercer. Great news for them. Aiden Bright, their star, is okay after last week. He left the game in the third quarter, and they thought it was kind of a chest or a stomach injury, but X-rays are fine, and it's just like a bruise. So he should be able to play, and he changed his games. When he left the game last week against Cockerton, you could just feel the momentum shift, and Cockerton got back in that game. So it's going to be a tough test for Northwestern to go down to Mercer. I think I have Mercer winning this one 14-12 or something like that. So it's going to be a tough game for them.
And in another Erie County matchup, there's 2 of them, and that are sort of mismatches that we taught from teams that had rough first weeks. Seneca visiting Harbor Creek, which won 48-0 last week, and Seneca lost big, and then Iroquois visiting Sharpsville, and Sharpsville is obviously a very good program that lost 14-6 last week to Hickory, so they're going to be out hungry for that first win.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on the Facebook Live last week. Piccarelli cannot fool me with this. Sharpsville might be down this year. They almost knocked off Hickory. A little bit of fireworks in that game too with a hit out of bounds. So it's going to be interesting to see. Sharpsville, I think they're looking for some blood now after losing that game last week. So it could get a little ugly down in the Pines. Let's
turn our attention to the big 3, as you call them. McDowell at Boardman is an interesting game. Boardman won 21-7 last year, but already McDowell has avenged a loss from last year when they beat Seneca Valley, who they had lost 30-6 to, I believe. in 2018, and then they win 35-14 last week. Now they're visiting Boardman, who they lost 21-7 to this week. It's going to be tough for Boardman to hold them to 7 points this year with the offense they have.
Yeah, they really, Chris Yukno, quarterback's really coming to his own in running that offense, and he's got more weapons now than last year. Going to Ohio is never easy, but I think McDowell is going to win this game at Boardman.
Interesting. We mentioned Erie has a test against Austintown Fitch. Ohio teams are playing their openers this week, so these are the first games for both of these teams. But Austintown Fitch is going to visit Erie at Gannon University because the turf is not ready at Veterans Stadium yet and won't be for a while still. What do you think of this game, Tom?
Yeah, that could be a chip on the shoulder of Erie. They're 1-0. They don't get to play at home. They get to play one home game this year in October, so they could be angry about that and want to take it out on Austintown Fitch. Yeah. But it's interesting with Ohio because you mentioned they haven't played a game yet, but they start their practice before Pennsylvania and they scrimmage three times.
More, yeah. So it's not like they're coming in without any experience.
It's like they played a full month of football already.
That's true.
So we'll see what happens. I think Erie High at home is too tough. Their defense looks really good so far, so I'm going to take Erie into winning this game.
Yeah, and Prep, of course, hosts another Canadian team at Dollinger Field for the second straight week. They had a good week against a tough, talented Clarkson North team. A little bit different this week because West Toronto Prep was losing 45-0 at the half to Peters Township last week and lost 45-0. So this might not be the best matchup.
Yeah, I think West Toronto Prep is at the beginning, and they want to get to where Clarkson North is as a Canadian program that has to come down here every single week. They're trying to build that program, but they're just not there yet. So I think Prep, they may, it's not going to be an emotional setback after last week. Got their payback last week, and I think they're just going to keep rolling on this week.
Speaking of Ohio, we talked about earlier, Ohio begins actually tonight, Thursday night. Conneaut, Ohio is hosting Edgewood, Ohio, and of course Conneaut, Ohio plays a District 10 schedule even though they're an Ohio team, and they will be in our local Region 4, I believe. Region 3. It's interesting that they're starting today. The rest of the schedule, we have one more Erie County game. It's Union City and Eisenhower. Both had losses last week, and both didn't score last week, so this is a chance. Really, the team that gets through this game, you have some optimism. The team that doesn't get through this game with a win, it's going to be tougher.
Yeah, I think this game last year was like 44-42 in overtime at the Pasture Payne. Wow. And so it's going to be interesting because, Union City has a full week to get ready after having to go to Reynolds. Eisenhower's a short week. They play Saturday afternoon against West Middlesex. They have to come on the road. So I took Union City in a close one. The Bears, they're really trying to find their identity after losing a lot to graduation, but I think this, home opener, this could be a win for them.
And let's talk a little bit about the southern part of the district where there are actual like 4 very good rivalries that I see this week. You have Sharon at Hickory. Mm-hmm. You have Farrell at Wilmington, which was a great game last year, and of course two defending District 10 champions and 2 teams that went to the state finals. Of course, Farrell won Class 1A. Wilmington lost in Class 2A in the finals. You also have Greenville at Grove City, which is a tough one, and you have Slippery Rock at Reynolds. So those are 4 pretty nice matchups for the Southern fans.
Absolutely, and Sharon Hickory rivalry is very interesting. It's funny to watch. Both have new coaches this year. I believe they coached together at Sharon at some point. I mean, it was last year. I think Bill Dungy was on staff there. So Sharon. They're going on the road, but it's 2 miles down the road, so not a big deal. Hickory looked good last week. Sharon looked good last week, even in a loss, and it's gonna be a very interesting game. Yeah,
exactly. And Sharon is a 2-time defending Class 3A champion now. Before that, Hickory had won 6 in a row.
Yeah.
6 in a row. So you have big tradition at both schools.
Yeah, and 2 of the strong tradition programs in general. Just doing a great job with their football program. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Greenville and Grove City. They beat LaBeouf. Wasn't soundly. Their passing game was, of course, in effect. They have a new quarterback now. They keep throwing the ball. So that'd be an interesting game because Greenville's trying to get better. Slippery Rock at Reynolds could be one of those games of the week. Both kind of the same kind of team, I think. Just grinding it out, running the ball. So you have some very good games in the South.
But we both talked about we like Slippery Rock as a real up and comer this year. They seem to be ready, and they showed that against General McLean.
The funny thing is they might be the most balanced 3A team. You know, maybe they don't throw the ball as much, but they have a great line, great defense. They run the ball really well. Other teams in 3A have a hole somewhere, so it's gonna be interesting to see how far Slippery Rock goes this year.
And there's one Saturday game this week.
Yeah, you know, West Middlesex going to Lakeview. Things didn't go well for Lakeview last week against Maplewood. You know, Maplewood's gonna probably win region 2 this year. West Middlesex looked really good. Ty Tate, their new quarterback, really knows how to run that offense. Didn't have to throw the ball too much at Eisenhower. He runs the ball pretty well. Jason Davis had a great game, a couple of long touchdowns. So I think West Middlesex probably rolls in that one.
Okay. All right, that's it for us this week on Kickoff Talk. Thank you for joining us. As usual, look for our call. It's online. Tom makes his picks. He went 19-3 last week. See what he picks this week. That'll also be in Friday's edition of the Erie Times News. And look for our coverage both online at goerie.com and in the paper throughout the weekend of all our high school football. Thanks again for joining us.